Congratulations on finishing your course. That was some hard work. Now what do I do with it? Is there anyone that will house my course and help me sell it? What if I can get an entire team to help me sell my course that I worked so hard on? Have I got a discovery for you? The Great Discovery not only has a place for your course, but a network of affiliates that are eager to sell your hard-earned course creation. Want to make a little more money so you can build your course or invest in yourself? Opportunities for all this and more await you at The Great Discovery, or go to tuepodcast.net/discovery for more information. Once again, that's tuepodcast.net/discovery for more information about how to join The Great Discovery now. This is an Undiscovered Legacy production and proud member of Pod Nation Media Network. Hello, Skoob believers, and welcome to a very special episode 106 of the Undiscovered Entrepreneur, and it's me, Skoob, coming at you whatever device you happen to be listening on. Now, this is a very special episode of Undiscovered Entrepreneur Get Across the Start Line. We finally have the guest that we've been trying to get for the last 3 years on the podcast. I'm talking about none other than the amazing Pat Flynn. Pat Flynn has just released a game-changing book called Lean Learning: How to Achieve More by Learning Less. Discover how you can streamline your learning process to maximize productivity and success. Known for his incredible journey from being laid off to generating multiple streams of income, Pat brings inspiring stories and practical advice that resonates with aspiring new entrepreneurs as well as seasoned veterans of the craft. Get ready to dive into Pat's unique strategies of overcoming the 4 hurdles of stop: imposter syndrome, perfectionism, failure, and fear, the thing that stops entrepreneurs from starting their entrepreneurial adventure. So, ladies and gentlemen, Skoob believers, I'm happy to say, finally, let's listen to Pat Flynn. Are you ready to unlock your entrepreneur potential? Are you ready to break free from all the barriers holding you back? Then you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Undiscovered Entrepreneur, your first step in getting across the start line. I'm your host and guide, Skoob, and I'm here with one mission: to help you overcome the obstacles standing between you and the start of your adventure. Whether you're dreaming of launching a startup, creating the next big app, or turning your passion into a thriving business, this podcast is your launch pad. Together we'll navigate the challenges, overcome hidden boundaries that stop us from starting, and learn how to overcome them with the help of others, experience them right along with you. So are you ready to take that crucial step to transform from aspiring to inspiring? Then let's get across that start line together, right here, right now, on the Undiscovered Entrepreneur. Salutations, Skoob believers, and we are here again with another amazing entrepreneur, but we are not talking just any entrepreneur. We're talking about the entrepreneur that we've been trying to get on our podcast for the last 3 years. I'm so excited to have Mr. Pat Flynn on my podcast. Hey, Pat, how you doing?
Woo, let's go. I'm so excited for this. It's been a long time coming. Thank you so much. It is, and I'm so
excited we finally got together to be able to do this. It took me a little bit kind of like, I know I could ask him. And now the plans have aligned, and it just kind of worked out perfectly to have you on the podcast.
It has. I'm really excited, and I know we got a lot of overlap in terms of our audiences, so hopefully I can bring the goods for everybody listening and all the other Skoob believers out there.
All right. And speaking of that, I do have a kind of a semi-serious question to ask you.
Okay, what is it?
All right, here we go. Are you a Skoob believer?
I'm a Skoob believer. Let's go.
All right, yes.
Let's go.
Pat Flynn is a Skoob believer, ladies and gentlemen. It finally happened. All right, so right here up front, I'd like to kind of get, now, if you've been living under a rock for the last 14 years, you probably don't know exactly who Pat Flynn is. So I know that most of my audience know who you are because I constantly talk about you in my podcast. But for that 1 or 2% of people that might not know who you are, can you kind of tell me who you are, what your entrepreneur adventure is, and how you got to start across the start line in your entrepreneur adventure?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my entrepreneurial adventure is sort of like an anime, a very long-running anime, like the One Piece or something. But within that, there are many different adventures, different places we go to, different challenges and dragons that I've had to slay over time. So I'm excited to dive into a lot of those sort of arcs, if you'll call them that. But my first arc really started after getting laid off from my architecture job. This was back in 2008. I was set on a life plan to become an architect and start my own firm and just retire and enjoy life. And in 2008, with the Great Recession, I got laid off, and it was the worst thing that could ever happen to me, especially 2 months after proposing to my girlfriend, and then later finding out that I'm not going to make any money and I had to move back in with my parents. So life was kind of going the opposite direction, and that's when I discovered a podcast. In fact, this is why podcasts are so meaningful to me, and why I started one myself later, was because one changed my life, and that podcast was called Internet Business Mastery. Now, there were a lot of people talking about how to make money online back then, but all of them were basically saying, we have the secrets to riches, but you have to pay us a lot of money first before you get access to that info. These guys were just giving it all away for free, and that's where I learned a lot of what I do, which is to serve first and to kind of give away all that information and then build that community on top of that, which is exactly what they did and what I became a part of. Because long story short, I started a business, thanks to them, helping people pass an exam called the LEED exam. This is a very particular exam in the architecture space. I stepped up into the internet to do that, and it soon became a wild success. I had made, I think, over $200,000 in the first year, and it just was 3.5 times more than I was making when I was in architecture. So it was kind of unbelievable. And at that time, a lot of people, especially my old architecture friends, were just asking me every day, how did you do that? Can you show me? Can you teach me? And I said, I don't know. It just kind of happened as it happened, and I was just learning as I went. And he's like, well, just share. They were just share everything. And I said, okay. So I started a website, smartpassiveincome.com, to share everything, all the things I was learning, all the things I was making mistakes on, new business adventures that I was creating. And that's where it kind of all started. That's where the Smart Passive Income started to podcast. I started to do YouTube. I started to write some books. I started to get on stages to tell my story. I found over time that my story of having gotten laid off and having this sort of readjustment plan in life, kind of without even knowing it, and my layoff being a blessing in disguise, was very relatable. Started to kind of open up more about my story and share the principles that I've learned and the values that I've come to understand that make a great entrepreneur. And so I've helped tens of thousands of people start their own entrepreneurial journey. Currently, we have the SPI community, which houses over 1,000 paying members who pay to get access to not just our premium online courses, but to me during office hours, to other experts that we have in the space, and most importantly, to each other. We found that people are more likely to succeed when they're doing it with other people versus just doing it on their own. So that's one arc, but there's been a lot of other arcs that have branched off of that main arc, which is, for example, I have an invention called the Switch Pod that started in 2017. It's a tripod for videographers and travelers, and it generated $415,000 in 60 days on a Kickstarter campaign. I've also started and sold several different niche websites, from security guard training to food trucks. I have started software companies. Some of them folded, others I've sold, others I still have. And more recently, I have started a YouTube channel about Pokemon, which I didn't know anything about before 2020 other than Pikachu and Charizard. And now I am one of the top creators in the space with a channel with 1.5 million subscribers on YouTube. I started a second shorts-only channel less than 300 days ago that now has 1.3 million subscribers, and it's turned into a 5-figure business per month that is based off of ad revenue. And I'm getting invited to Pokemon events now. I have a relationship with Pokemon. I've created my own live event called Card Party that houses thousands of people each time, with sponsors and vendors and fans and attendees and other creators in the space. And so, as you can tell, I do a lot. And a number of questions come up when I talk about all the things that I have my hand in. The first one is, how do you find the time to do this? Which I know is the big obstacle for a lot of people. Another one is just, how are you able to seemingly do so well in all this stuff? Now, I'll say I'm not Midas. I don't touch anything and it becomes gold, but I understand and have found a golden framework that has allowed me to approach certain things in a way to learn those things quickly, to understand what works and what doesn't, and not get bogged down by a lot of the obstacles that I know you talk a lot about, and the fears and the imposter syndrome and those sorts of things that always creep up. In fact, I'm feeling imposter syndrome at this very moment because I have a book coming out, my first traditionally published book this June, and I'm feeling those same feelings that all of you are feeling too. I'm just going to let you know up front, those feelings don't go away. But these are good feelings to have, not because they're going to stop you, but because they're signals that you care about this thing so much and you want it to work. You can harness that energy, rewrite it into something that can then help you get energy to follow through and hopefully see success on the other end, which often there is. So anyway, that's a lot, Skoob, to just kind of go over in a short period of time. And I don't know where you want to take it, but there's a lot of things to potentially dig into, but that's where we're at.
Yeah, for sure. It's normal to feel these things, the imposter syndrome, the perfectionism, the failure fear, the 4 hurdles of stop. They're emotions that are kind of built into us already. So even though to us, it feels kind of like, oh, this doesn't feel good. If you reframe the way you're thinking about those things, they could actually be a positive thing in the end.
Exactly.
And exactly. I love having a framework. It's important to have that framework, especially. Well, that's the thing about me too, is I do a lot too. But being able to set the boundaries to be able to do those many different types of things is how I kind of do that. Do you kind of do the same thing?
Correct. In fact, I have several boundary related things that I talk about in the book, and just I've taught in life before. I'm teaching this to my kids, for example. One strategy that you may have heard when starting something is this thing called the one thing. Only focus on one thing. There's books written about it, and it makes sense. When you focus all your energy on one thing, it has a better chance to grow. However, the roadblock and obstacle that I come across, and I know many of likely your listeners come across as well, is we are not built to just focus on one thing. We have so much creative itch out there that we want to scratch that it just almost feels impossible. It almost feels like a letdown to just choose one thing. So how do we do multiple things, but do them in a smart way with boundaries and other things? Well, I have created this thing called the 20% itch rule, which means allowing yourself 20% of your time to play, to be creative, to try something new, to allow for failure to happen without worry, because you have the other 80% of things that you are doing, that you're responsible for, that you have already committed and said yes to. And that way I can have some time to play and be creative and scratch that itch whilst still being sure that these other things that I'm focusing are working. Now, the other thing about this, especially if you're just starting out, is you're listening to all the things that I'm doing. I'm not doing them all at the same time. This is a progressive effort. This is one thing that I learn, understand, and then either automate or put aside, and then or put team into, or have tools make a little easier to do, and I get time back that I can then put into something else. And that's how it's always been. So it's kind of like a one thing at a time, but not just one thing always forever, which kind of holds people back. You don't want to necessarily pigeonhole yourself and remove that creativity, because that's often the parts that make you happy. Even if you were to fail, truthfully though, there is no failure if you are trying and you keep going, because true failure is giving up. You're still learning as you go, and those skills that you learn can stack on the things that you've already said yes to and are doing. Other things to protect are your time and your calendar. For me, I talk about time blocking, and we've heard of time blocking before, where you put blocks of time in your calendar, but I've rewritten what that actually means. I call it time blocking because you are literally blocking out anything else that can happen during that time other than what you just wrote, right? You create a shield around that time. You protect it, whether it's the 80% of things that you have to do and you're protecting that time and staying disciplined on those things, or you're protecting your play time, your creative time, and those 20% of times of things. So looking at my calendar and understanding what I'm supposed to be doing and when is really, really important, but it's very easy to put things on the calendar and then not follow them. It's being disciplined enough to actually follow through and protect that time to give yourself the biggest chance and opportunity to find success. The other thing I found, especially as somebody who had built my business in a one-bedroom apartment, was to have a physical space that is where you do your work. I found that when I tried to be on my laptop on the couch and somebody's watching TV next to me, but I'm trying to get work done, it's just very, very difficult to focus. Rather, when I have a physical space, like in my one apartment bedroom, it was the kitchen table. That was my signal to when I sit down there, I'm getting stuff done. It was also a signal to other people around me that I was in work mode. Now I have a door, thankfully, that I can walk into. But then mentally, either way, it is where you sit down and know that you are in this mode versus, and the opposite side of this is when you get up or get out of that room, you can now be fully in tune with where you're supposed to be then. For me, it's my family. I used to blend the two, and it just did not work out really well. I used to have conversations with my wife and my kids, but still be in business mode and just not fully present with either one of those things. So I found that by compartmentalizing what I do and when, it's just made for so many more better results, getting into flow state much easier, and seeing ideally a better bottom line as a result in the end.
I had to do something really similar when I first started out, because I'm in a studio here, but I got some boxes and I surrounded myself with these boxes, and that was my space. It was kind of weird at first. I was like, what am I really doing here? But at the same time, I felt when I sat down in those boxes, I was behind the box. This is the time where I sit down and do my podcasting, do my interviews, do my editing and all that stuff. So having a space for yourself to get into that zone, whatever that zone might be, whatever that zone of genius might be, is a good way to be able to keep things separated like that.
For sure. For sure. I mean, there's so many things related to that we could talk about, but I know that there's a lot of other components of how I've been able to do what I do, right? So we talked about the 20% itch rule. The other thing, and this is really what the thesis of lean learning is, it's just there's too much information out there now. Back in the day, information was the thing that was valuable because we didn't all have access to it. If you had an Encyclopedia Britannica, you were considered higher class because you bought information that not other people had. Now we all have information just right on our phones, and we all have access to the same stuff. And if access to the information were the key, then we'd all be where we want to be, but we're not, right? So we are, in fact, at a buffet line of information now, and we're filling our plates so high. We are almost built as humans to hoard information like it's food because we don't feel like we might come across that again, although we know now that's not true, although we're still in the behavior of overconsumption. I remember at one point, I don't know about you, Skoob, but I was subscribed to, I think, like 25 different podcast episodes. It's like, what am I going to do with that? I'm just going to listen all day and do nothing. We are over-subscribing, over-learning, and we need to discover the distinction between just-in-case information and just-in-time information. Just-in-case information is the hoarding. It's I'm going to learn this, and I'm going to review this, and I'm going to check this out just in case I might need that later. And in many cases, you're only going to need 1% of that. In fact, a lot of times when you start something, especially for those of you who are starting businesses, you are inclined to want to know everything that you're about to get into. You're going to want to learn all the information. But when you do that, you get overwhelmed, you get confused, and in most cases, you talk yourself out of those things because it's scary and overwhelming versus knowing where you want to go, yes, but what is your next step? And with that next step and that next step only, what do you need to learn to do that next step well and do it right? So case in point, when I was writing my study guide for my architecture website, right, I started to learn about all the different things I was eventually going to need. I needed to know how to format the book. I knew about writing books, but I didn't know like formatting it. I didn't know how to turn it into something that could be a deliverable for people. I didn't know what to price it. I didn't know what mechanisms I was going to use to capture money and then deliver that ebook. And I didn't know anything other than I just know that none of that's going to happen unless I don't write this book. Or unless I write this book. So let me just focus on that. So nothing else mattered at the time. And I said, okay, how can I write the best study guide? So I went into Word and I just started to dissect, and I started to go to Barnes and Noble and look at other study guides and see which ones were helpful. Think about other study guides that I've used in the past for other architecture exams and go, this is what I really loved about those. And I incorporated that into designing and creating the best study guide that I could. And then once that was done, a fire lit under me because I had it. I had the thing that I was going to deliver. I just needed to now figure out, well, how was I going to deliver it? And guess what? Those resources on how to understand how to do that were already there. I had them in the connections I had with my mastermind group I was in. There was a lot of information and way more information now that is available to learn how to do these things and tools that can make them very easy. But none of that would have been on my plate if I hadn't yet first written the book. Same thing happened with the switch pod in our invention, right? Did I know how to invent something? No, I had never done that before, but I knew that we needed a prototype. So I just cut something out of cardboard and we played with it and cut out other ones that were bigger, smaller, wider, thinner until we got one that we liked. And then we're like, okay, cool. Well, we need this to function now. So how do we get it to function? What do? We asked around. Oh, you should 3D print this thing. Cool. So we got it 3D printed. And then we said, okay, is this going to work for people? Like, how would we ultimately know if this is a tool they're going to use? Let's go to a YouTube event and just hand it to people and literally ask them, what do you like about this? What do you not like about it? And then get information from there. Okay, cool. We have this prototype. We got it done. And okay, cool. How do we pre-sell this thing? I don't know. Kickstarter. Well, how do you use Kickstarter? I don't know. Go to people who've gone to Kickstarter and done well before. Cool. Let's do that. So we studied Kickstarter. We figured out the pricing models and the bonuses for all the different levels. Cool. Launched in February of 2019. And on our first day, we hit our $60,000 goal. On our first day in a 60-day promotional period. And then we, again, learned all about the other things, manufacturing, packaging, etc. Stuff that, again, if we just tried to learn all of that up front, we would have never gotten here and not now have a product that is on Amazon selling every single day and generating passive income for us now. So again, just in time information versus just in case information. That is when a lot of people ask me, Pat, where do you get most of your time back? It's because I'm not learning everything. I'm actually disciplined enough now to not listen to the hyped podcast episode that everybody's talking about right now, because I don't need to know about Pinterest today. Even though I want to, and everybody says it can help, it's just going to add more noise to me when I hear the things that I'm already doing and saying yes to in my next step that I need to learn about, not Pinterest. No offense to Pinterest. I'm just not there yet.
Yeah, I find myself doing the same thing too. Like, I try to open a Pinterest and it's just not part of what I do. And it just didn't seem to fit. So I just kind of put that to the side. So
cool.
On this podcast, we talk mainly about imposter syndrome, perfectionism, failure, and fear. The 4 hurdles of stop is what I call that, because that's what actually stops us from getting across the start line in our entrepreneur adventure. So from what I'm made to understand, your book actually covers a lot of the things. Can you kind of cover each of those and how they're covered in the book?
Yeah, let's go through them one by one. If you could remind me what they are, because I mean, I've experienced them and still do, as what you can guide me through that. So the first one is imposter syndrome, correct?
Yes.
So, man, imposter syndrome is a killer. I mean, that will immediately, you start to remove yourself from any excitement that you had about the thing because you don't feel like you're qualified to talk about the thing, or you feel like you don't deserve this, or you feel like other people have maybe beat you to it, or you're not expert enough. But when I think about the things that I've learned over time and how I've learned what I've learned to get here, the people I'm learning from aren't the top world-class experts on things. In fact, a lot of people who support me and who provide me the most value are people who've literally just gone through the same process that I'm going through right now. You can be massively valuable by just being just a couple steps ahead of somebody. That, in my eyes, is more relatable because you have just gone through the process. In fact, I had a major bout of imposter syndrome in 2009. So I released my study guide for the lead exam. It was doing really well. And then in May 2009, the exam company, who literally writes the exam questions for this guide that I had created, came out with their own guide. I thought I was cooked. I was done. Immediately, I started asking, why would people buy from me? I mean, I didn't get a perfect score on the test. In fact, I barely passed. And I'm just a regular guy trying to help people. Whereas the company who wrote the questions came out with this guide. It's probably so much better. But in fact, May 2009 was one of my peak months. I had made $30,000 that month. More people bought, despite a competitor having their own product. And when I asked my customers why they wanted my guide, I thought they were going to say, well, it's a little cheaper, or it was an ebook, so it was more convenient, or whatever. None of the answers were that. The answers were, I feel like you're just like me and you've just figured it out. I feel like you'd have a lot more information to share because you've just passed the exam yourself. And I talked about a lot of things beyond just the test questions. I talked about how to approach exam day, how to put yourself in the right mindset, all these other things that this company was too far removed from to provide value for. So in fact, I had an advantage being smaller, being in the crowd with them, right? And if you're thinking about your own positioning in the space that you're in fact, coming in now is a huge advantage because you have a bird's eye perspective. As you look at the map of the space and this niche that you're going into, you're able to see things that people who've been in it for a while just cannot see. You can actually take advantage of a lot of the reviews. For example, if you're creating a competing product, you could look at the reviews of the existing products and or brands and then go, okay, well, here's what people like about them and here's what they don't. So let me incorporate what people like and leave out what they don't. Again, you have a huge advantage coming in now. The other thing that helps me get over imposter syndrome, and this is especially helpful if you're a person who's thinking about sharing information or coaching people or consulting or those kinds of businesses, which are great businesses to start with because they can get you to their first dollars much faster than writing a book or starting an online course without an audience first. I have this strategy for building business called the 1-1-1 strategy. So you find one niche or market. Within that market, you find one person, just literally one person, and you solve them. You help them solve one problem, one market, one person, one solution to one problem. And when you do that, a few things happen. Number one, it helps you just go out there to find one person, right? Which is a great exercise. And if you can't find one, it's going to be hard to find many, many more customers. So this is like narrows it down, makes it simple, makes it easy. Secondly, going through the process of talking to a prospect and helping them understand what you have to offer by first figuring out what they might need help with. This discovery through actually being a part of the community is so much better and more empathetic. What you're creating is for a real person at this point, and helping them through a process, or helping them discover something, or helping them make something less inconvenient. And then finally, when you get that result, something happens. Not only do you have a testimonial now, so that when you go out there and you start to amplify this on a platform, for example, you have a real case study that you can kind of use in support, but you unlock that part of your brain that says, can I even do this? Is this even helpful? Am I at all of any value? Those go immediately out the window as soon as you get a result for somebody. So find one person, get them a result. All those feelings of doubts that were based on, I don't know if I can do this, or am I good enough? That goal, like, you found truth, that is a rebuttal on that. And you can now support yourself moving forward from that. The other thing that really helps me moving forward in terms of building is a question and a prompt that I got from Tim Ferriss when he was helping me through a lot of my beginning stages of business, which is this question here, which is, if this were easy, what would it look like? Mm-hmm. If this were easy, what would it look like? It's an acronym that I call IT, we will. If this were easy, what would it look like? And that often, because we always overcomplicate everything, just as humans, and especially as business owners, we think things are much harder than they actually are. Let's simplify and just do those things. Launch with an MVP, or minimum viable product. And that, again, that progression, that momentum that can happen when you simplify also helps you get over that imposter syndrome. Because the longer you wait, the longer you find confirmation bias, as they call it. You look for proof of reasons why you will not succeed. You will look for proof on reasons why this isn't for you to do. And again, the fact that you know that you can help somebody just because you're a few steps ahead paints you as the expert. And people would much rather learn from somebody who's just like them versus a professor who's been at a university for 40 years, who's probably so far removed from what it's actually like to try and start and do these things or help a person through a problem.
Exactly. It's not so much of knowing all the answers, but knowing that you have the experience to be able to do what you do, because you've been there already, and you're not so far out that you're not, like you said, you're so far removed from the area that you're not going to be able to be reached by anybody. But if you're only one or two steps ahead, you could look back and say, oh yeah, I remember that. This is what I did then. And it just makes it so much better to you. And I also learned, this is how I got over my imposter syndrome, was to stop owning imposter syndrome. Stop saying I have imposter syndrome and change that I to a different word, so I don't own something that's so negative.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, a lot of it is just rewiring of the stuff that's happening in our brain. And I love that you're talking about this consistently with your audience. I mean, honestly, you can't start without it. So you have to rewrite these things, and you have to, I think it was Henry Ford who said, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So how you think about the things that you're doing is really going to help you determine one way or another how things are going to work out. So, I mean, we could speak, I'm sure, for hours, Skoob, about imposter syndrome, but I'd love to move on to the next thing and kind of uncover some strategies that I've personally used to help through. So which one's the next one? I know fear is there, and what else? We're
gonna hit perfectionism here, and that's a big one for a lot of people that I've talked to, and my Skoob believers. They wait for the perfect time, or the product has to be perfect. I mean, what do you think of that?
I've learned that that's just an excuse, right? It's what we say to make us feel better about waiting to do something, because we say, oh, we want it to be perfect, when in fact you're just kind of more scared to put it out there. And you use the idea that, well, it's not right yet, or it's not the right time, to just continue to delay and delay and delay. Imagine you are on a boat and somebody falls over and they're drowning in the ocean right in front of you. And you have a lifeline. You have the sort of little circle thing that's right there next to you. And you see this person drowning. What do? Do you say, I've never thrown one of these before. Like, what if I don't throw it in the right place? I'm going to keep it. I'm just going to hold it. I'm not going to put it out there and try to help this person, because I'm so worried about like the flight path that this ring is going to take. That's stupid, right? But that's essentially what you are doing when you say you have perfectionism. So there's a lot of mechanisms to get over perfectionism. Mine is a psychological internal look at what that actually signals. It signals that I value my own safety and all these worries about what people will think about what I do. I value that more than me wanting to help serve and help other people. And when I think about it that way, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm being so selfish by worrying about perfectionism. Because if a person were metaphorically drowning in this ocean that you know about because you've gone through it before, you're going to throw it out there. And if you miss, you reel it back in, you throw it again. Nothing else matters. And it doesn't really matter how well you throw it. You're putting it out there and you're trying to rescue these people, right? And of course, the more you do it, the better you get at it. The more reps you have, the more likely it is for you to make your way toward perfection. Perfection can only happen by doing. The only way to learn is through mistakes. You can't make mistakes if you're so worried about getting started. And this is, again, a big part of the book is the learning that happens by doing. And a lot of us are conditioned. I know I was growing up as a millennial from a traditional family with an Asian parent. A minus, why not A? That's the theme, right? I came home with a 95% on my math test. I remember this because when I got home, very proud of my A, I spent the next 4 hours with my dad working on the questions that I got incorrect and feeling like an idiot because of it. No offense, Dad, I love you. But that was very traumatizing. And it really conditioned me to want to be perfect because it was either perfect or not good at all. And I found that you can still help people. You can still serve people when things aren't perfect. The thing that can serve them is your effort, your energy in what you put out there. And that's, again, how you get better. Doing nothing by holding something in because it's 98% good enough. Like, how selfish is that? So again, that's what I think about. I think about that metaphor of the boat and the life ring whenever perfectionism seems to kind of come my way. And now, like, I love when I get pointed out mistakes because that is always an opportunity to get better. And so I want to fail fast. I want to fail faster because that gets me up and gets me around those mistakes much quicker. So that's perfectionism.
Yeah, I almost look forward to people saying, hey, I see this little problem that you have here, maybe this and that kind of thing. Because I want to have first of all, I want to have that feedback so I can make myself better.
Yeah, somebody cares enough to want to make your stuff better. That is huge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, too, it's funny you kind of put it that way, too, because when I interviewed John Lee Dumas on my podcast, he said, if you're waiting for perfectionism, you're basically being a coward. You're not really kind of putting yourself out there because you don't want to, because you're hiding behind perfectionism.
Yeah. He and I think quite alike.
Yeah. That's how I found both of you. So, so now we're going to talk about failure a little bit here. Now, when I talk about failure, we actually just touched on it just a little bit, but I want to get a little more deeper into it. When I think of failure, I think about the acronym for failure, first attempt in learning. But what do you think of when you think of failure?
To me, failure means giving up. It means not giving yourself the best chance to try to find a way to succeed. And again, in this world with plenty of information, the info that's there to help you, the resources that are available to you are endless. So that's not an excuse anymore. It's completely it's completely self-driven failure. However, the way out of it often cannot happen with just you. There have been so many cases where I was going down a spiral or not feeling good about a launch and feeling like they were failures, even though I know internally they're learning moments and I can try and do better the next one. You can't help but in the moment just feel like so down on yourself and so deflated, right? And that's not a good place to be. The only way that I've been able to get out of those moments were from other people. So when I got laid off and I was feeling like a failure, even though it was not my fault. Many times it's not. But how you perceive these things and the story that you write about the circumstances have you determining whether or not like it is actually on you or not. And oftentimes we do make it about us. So I thought because I got laid off, I was a failure, even though it was completely the economy and they held me on as long as they could. And I had just recently gotten promoted to. Yet I still went down that rabbit hole and I fell into a state of depression. But it wasn't always that way it was my wife or then fiance who helped me understand that no matter what, we were going to be okay. That's what she said to me. And I wrote about this in my book, Let Go, knowing that she was going to be there and I wasn't going to be alone was huge. And so if you're feeling like a failure, finding a community where you can openly share this and know that you're not going to get criticized for it, but rather just have some support of some kind. There's different kinds of support. I talk about this in Lean Learning. There's this sort of emotional support, like I was getting from my fiance at the time. That's really important to have, and those people around you. If you find that you have people around you that are championing you and what you do, and they might not understand exactly what you're trying to do, but they're there for you no matter what, like, please, like, lean into those relationships and cherish them. Those are golden, and they can help you as you start to spiral down, get back up to where you need to be. So I found that in my wife. There's also the support that can come from colleagues and peers, right? The other people that you surround yourself with. And for me, it was mastermind groups and the masterminds that I continue to be a part of. I'm currently a part of 2 that have been meeting consistently every week for each over a decade, the same group of people. And they often know me better than I know myself sometimes. They can see things because oftentimes, as they say, you can't read the label when you are inside the bottle. So you have to have these outside perspectives. And they've given me a lot of great strategic advice for business. They've helped me title some of my books. And they've also helped me stop myself from crashing out when I've fallen into a trap or had failed, quote unquote, on something. They've always helped me just morally come back because they understand, right? They got it. They also often share that they have done the same things too. And when you're in a failure moment, it's important to understand that you're not the first person to do that. You know, that people have done it before, and it's up to you whether or not you want to go down this path like other people have, which is like you give up and you just move on, or you go back and you go back even stronger, right? You get up and you brush yourself off and you go at it even harder. The other kind of championing that is very important is the sort of more mentorship approach, right? So you have your emotional support from friends and family, you have your peer and colleague support from people who kind of get what you're doing, but then you have your mentor support from people who now hold you accountable, right? And I remember at one point I had a friend, he's still a friend, but he's moved on from business, but he was able to help me through a very dark time. And he was able to do that as a mentor and somebody who I trusted, who I've been working with, who knew me again better than often I knew myself. And he told me that this was at a point where there was a hater who was sharing a lot of misinformation about me on the internet, and I was falling into a deep hole. In fact, I stopped publishing for about a month as a result of this because I just was not able to take it. And he came back and said, Pat, I know you. I know this is eating you up on the inside, but I also know how to get you out of this. And I'm going to tell you this right now. And this is what he said. He said, Pat, for every second you waste thinking about this hater and troll, you're taking a second away from those who are waiting to hear from you, who love you, who are looking to get your support. And it was at that very moment, because he knew me the way we've been talking for months, I was able to snap out of it and get out of that failure doom spiral and get back into it and get back into it with courage and with excitement and knowing, again, I had the support from people around me. So that is how I've found my way through a lot of failure. Learning that failing is just a little bump in the road that you can then learn from. That ultimate failure is the giving up. And then that moral and emotional and strategical support on the opposite end of that is really key too.
Fantastic. All great information. Yeah, it really does boil down to the people that we surround ourselves with, and how much support we get from them is what really picks us up at the very end.
Exactly.
All right. So we're going to go now. This is the thing about failure and fear, because they always seem to kind of coincide with each other. So fear, I always say, my brain stopped. I was doing so well. Okay. Yay, editing. Okay. False evidence appearing real. I've come across that over and over again. I kind of talk about that a lot, and how things that appear to be scary aren't really scary. It's just in our head. We got to get to the other side of that fear to be able to progress and find out what's on the other side of that fear.
Yep.
But we also fear failure. So that's kind of how they kind of go together. What do you think about that?
Yeah, fear is something I've studied because I felt a lot of it. Every time I wanted to up-level myself in business and get to that next sort of rung on the ladder, I've always felt a sense of fear. And I was always curious about where that came from. And some of it was a fear of failure and a fear of public shame, if you will, because I publicly share a lot of the stuff that I do. But I've realized that that's not true, because every time I publicly shared a failure, it's become a massive success in terms of the vulnerability, making a connection with people and people trusting me more as a result of that. So I found proof that my fear was untrue. And that's a very important thing to understand, is like finding the truth in that fear can help you unlock that fear and kind of flip it on its head. And what I've learned about fear, I don't know if this is true or not, because I've heard multiple takes on it, but this idea that we're only born with like two real fears. The fear of falling, which you can tell because if you take a baby and you like are holding it and cradling it, and then you kind of do a little and you kind of pretend to fall with it, its arms will kind of jet out to protect itself. It's like an innate ability for a baby to stop itself from falling. And it's just like a natural thing that we have. So we have this fear of falling and a fear of snakes, apparently. Indiana Jones will definitely +1 that. But all other fears that we have, like fear of public speaking, fear of failing at business, fear of success, these are all kind of fears that we kind of learn as we grow because of societal pressures, because of parental pressures, because of pressures that we put on ourselves, because of status, because of who else we're seeing out there and all these things and what they mean. And so I found that really interesting because it means like, okay, if I have learned my way into this fear, I can learn my way out of them, right? It's not just like built into me. I can deal with it. So that's very important to know. A person had helped me once through the fear of public speaking by revealing that the same parts of the brain light up when you are fearful and when you are excited. And it's like you said, Skoob, it's what you make of that becomes true. So if you are firing your brain about something, it could be either fear or excitement. And somebody had told me, like, Pat, you're about to go on stage. Like, you look like you're going to throw up. And I was like, yeah, I usually look like I'm about to throw up before I go on stage. Even though I love it, even though I enjoy it, I still fear it. However, he was able to rewrite what that meant to me because he said, well, imagine you were Oprah. And there was a very famous segment of Oprah when she was giving away a car to everybody in the audience. You might remember that, right? You get a car, you get a car, you get a car. And he said, imagine what she was feeling before she knew she was going to get on stage and just give everybody a car. Do you think she was fearful of that? Or do you think she was excited about that? And I was probably, oh my gosh, like I can only imagine the excitement because of what you were going to give to people. And he's like, I want you to understand that what you are about to share on stage to the audience that's here, it's like a brand new car. It's stuff that's going to change their lives. It's stuff that is going to be unexpected. I want you to be just that excited about what you're about to do on stage. And that completely rewired my thinking around my fear and the failure that I was expecting to have and just what I was about to do and get into. So I now actually, when I go out and I try different things, like write my first traditionally published book about a topic that I'm not necessarily known for, learning and education versus entrepreneurship, although a lot of those things overlap, getting up on stages, launching new products, going live in front of audiences online. If I'm not feeling a little bit of quote unquote fear, which then of course I rewrite to excitement, then I'm not pushing myself hard enough. I'm becoming a little complacent. I might be a little too comfortable. I might get a little cocky and not do the work required to deliver the value that I want to deliver. So now I actually gravitate toward those feelings of fear/excitement, knowing that often that's right before something amazing can happen, whether it's getting up on stage and delivering a life-changing keynote or getting a book into people's hands that I think is going to change the world and impact their lives. Or like when we had kids, like that was like, I'd never held a kid before my own. I was deathly afraid, yet it has become the most beautiful thing. And now my son's 15 and going to drive soon, which is insane. But, you know, all that to say, like, it's about how you react to these feelings and the things that you're telling yourself about what's going on. And that was a big one for me. It's not fear, it's excitement. And if you didn't accept excitement, then that's when you should worry more.
That's kind of when you know you're going the right direction, is when you have those butterflies in your stomach and your chest. Yeah, at first it seems like, oh boy, what am I doing? But at the same time, it's like, I'm excited to do this. This is how I prepared myself for this podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Right? Exactly. You're crazy, Steve. I heard recently that like our brains are wired to be challenged and to find problems to solve. Like we are just wired as people and humans to find problems to solve. And so if you're kind of just sitting there complacent about the work that you're doing and the business that you're starting, you're going to look for problems elsewhere, or either make up problems or kind of create drama out of nothing. versus let's put ourselves in a situation to be somewhat challenged in this business that we're doing, step up and get on stage or put that content out there, or publish those videos or whatever. And that becomes what our brain then uses as fuel to grow, which is that challenge. It always needs to be challenged in some way, or else it's just going to find challenges elsewhere. And you might as well do it with the business that you're starting and know that that's a good sign that you're A, challenging yourself, but B, that there's something amazing that's likely to happen on the other end of it. The other part about this that we didn't touch on, but kind of threads a lot of these things together is just expectation and patience. I feel like a lot of us today especially want results yesterday. And we read the news, we see the headlines, we are caught up on social media, and we see a lot of people who seemingly create things overnight, and then we compare ourselves to them, right? We need to continue to do the work and put the reps in and let the things happen when they're supposed to happen. And base your success not on necessarily the numbers that are showing up when you publish a video or the number of podcast downloads, but rather have you count uploads, not likes. That's what a friend of mine, Alex Ketchum in the Pokemon space with me, he was the one who inspired me to go daily and now see a channel with 1.3 million subscribers from a daily shorts channel. It's count uploads, not likes. So what I did was I said, okay, I'm going to go and daily post a shorts video for 60 days straight. And of course, I am going to look at the numbers, but I'm not going to stop until I hit 60 days. When we got to day 25, 30, I was looking at the numbers just to kind of see how things were going. I was getting a couple hundred views a day. And if I cared about the numbers and if that was my sole purpose, I would have given up. I would have stopped. But I said, no, I'm going to get to 60 days because I want to see this thing all the way through. Give it a real shot. Give it time to marinate and get there. Well, day 34, 35 came around. One of those videos hit 1 million views, just kind of out of nowhere. And then everything started to grow, even my back catalog. And so now I publish a video and it'll have 1 million views in one day. And I do that every single day. And so I have 1.7 billion views now, cumulative across all those platforms, TikTok, Reels, and Shorts, from a channel that's less than 300 days old, because I cared about the reps and me showing up. And what that did was it got me to get better every day. I told better story every day. I edited much faster every day. It just became that much easier to create because I said, I'm just going to do this for 60 days, not because I'm trying to get 1 million views. So count the reps and count the uploads, not the likes, not the views. And when you base your success on that, you can't lose. You can't lose unless you stop, right? When you base your success on the views or the sales or the likes, well, those are all things that you can't necessarily control. In fact, you could publish the same video twice and you can have 1 million likes and you can have 0 likes. It just depends on how YouTube feels that day. And so to base your success on something that you cannot fully control is really hard. Yes, of course, we want those numbers to look good, but what can you control? You can control how you show up and how often. And that's what you should focus on. And that's what you should be proud of. So if you get to the 60 days and it didn't do like a lot of views, you still won. You learned, you got faster, and you can pivot knowing that you gave it a real shot and you said what you were going to do. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because it's a big realization that just kind of recently happened across a lot of new creators that I'm kind of supporting, is that count uploads, not likes kind of situation.
Yeah, we really should take that to heart too, because I know for a fact that a lot of the Skoob believers out there, they're looking for those hearts. They're looking for those thumbs ups. And they're nice when you get them, but you really can't control them, like you said. So if it's not in your control, it's not so much something you worry about. Like you said before, what's in your control is what you can control. So your downloads and what you actually do, and to get to the finish line when you get there and understand, hey, I did this, and you gave it a shot. And whether it worked or where you didn't, that's up to you where you go from there. So it's great that we do that for ourselves, not for anybody else, but for ourselves.
Exactly. And again, when you show up every day like that, whether it's daily or weekly or whatever it might be, again, everybody's schedule and capacity is different. But then you can practice something I like to call micro mastery. And this is one of my favorite productivity tips when it comes to growing as an entrepreneur, and that's taking this big thing that we're doing and then hyper focusing on one small area for a period of time to just master that. That's called micro mastery. So for example, when I was learning how to speak on stage, yes, I got a coach and all these other things, but I would approach each talk with a hyper focus in mind. So for example, I'd go into a speech and I'd say, okay, today I'm going to work on just my hands. Like, yes, I'm going to deliver the whole talk, but I'm specifically going to learn all about what do you do with your hands and what does it mean? And I'm going to watch TED Talks. I'm going to learn. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to get involved. I'm going to talk to my other speaker friends and just ask and just deep dive on hands so that when I go up on stage on next week, I'm going to do my best on my hands and learn these things. And now it's ingrained in me. And I can move on to micromaster the next thing once I understand this. This is how I learned that when you're up on stage, when you're front of stage, more toward the edge of the stage, you're more in a bigger presence in front of your audience. And so you use that for more impactful moments and bigger, bolder things that you want to share with your audience versus if you're backstage a little bit, you're a little bit more vulnerable. It's feeling like a shield. You're putting space between you and the audience. So use that during tough moments in your story, during hard times. And when you can, like, again, this is like hyper master focus on these things. And it's allowed me to become a world-class speaker by learning these things kind of in a compartmentalized way where I just master one thing at a time. A lot of athletes do this, right? Musicians as well. You see this in music. You don't just like play the song over and over and over and over again until you get better. But a conductor will say, no, hey, let's just focus on these measures here. And by the way, let me just hear the saxophone. Let's go. Okay, you saxophone, play that again and again until you get that rhythm right. Okay. You're micro mastering these little things so that the band plays the best music it can in whole. And you can do the same thing with your business. So for us as YouTubers, it's like, okay, let's micro master thumbnails. Thumbnails are one of the most important things when it comes to YouTube. And yes, you can tell a great story. You can learn about all the camera equipment that you can need. But if you just master thumbnails, you're going to be 80% ahead of everybody else because that's what people see when they click. So let's deep dive on that. Who's doing thumbnails well? What are their principles? How do we learn? Let's see some examples. And this is how at Deep Pocket Monster, we've been able to master our thumbnails in a way where now we can almost guarantee 1 million views in a week from our long form videos, which of course helps support the channel with revenue and sponsorships and all those kinds of things too. So again, you can see how when you repeat yourself, you can have now the opportunity to micromaster something. You can't micromaster if you're just like willy-nilly creating things here and there and kind of when you want to. It only can happen through repetition. And so there's a lot of benefits to just continually showing up, putting the reps in. And honestly, it's going to separate you from everybody else who's just looking for a flash in the pan or for some like one video to go randomly viral because they're following some trend. It is those who consistently show up that you often never hear about because they're doing so well, right? Because they're putting in the work and it's not sexy. It's not like flashy, but they're getting the stuff done and they're getting it done well and they're learning as they go.
It's those 1% improvements, right? That we micromanage down to that one thing that's perfect, make that 1% improvement. Then over time we go, okay, now here's this other 1% improvement we could work on. And we just kind of build it up from there. So that's amazing. Thank you, Pat.
Yeah. Yeah, my pleasure. I mean, think about it if you're doing email marketing as a business, imagine you just hyper focus on what your subject lines are. Everything else downstream is going to be so much better. And then from there, after micromastering that, you micromaster your conversions from people reading those emails to now clicking over to your sales page or your product. Cool, let's focus on that. Who does it well? How do we, what's the right copy around the link? And all this stuff can be done. And it's done in a way that's achievable, right? It takes these things that are so huge and simplifies them into one little thing that you can do, just like just-in-time information versus just-in-case information. So anyway, I hope this encourages your listeners and motivates them to know that you're not many steps away from success. You have to take steps, and you've got to get through these 4 things before you see any results.
Exactly. And it's all in that book, Lean Learning, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hold that? You had the book up there, didn't you, Pat? Yeah,
this is the advanced reader's copy. It's going to be a hardcover edition, but this is Lean Learning. And across the top, you might not be able to see it, but I have 3 things that are crossed out. Number 1, learn everything. Number 2, get overwhelmed. Number 3, give up. No, that's all crossed out. Lean Learning, how to achieve more by, in fact, learning less.
There you go. That's awesome. Hey, so Pat, I like to do this with all my guests, and this is kind of a tradition here on the podcast. In 6 months, where do you see you and your company and everything you're happening with? What is your 6-month goal for yourself, Pat?
So 6 months from now, it'll be March, April, May, June, July. The book will have been out for a month at this point. I will have already celebrated the fact that it is a New York Times bestseller. I am really hoping for that. If it doesn't, that's okay. But again, I'm shooting there. But I'm putting in the reps, right? I'm doing the work and I'm showing up daily. I'm showing up on shows like yours. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity to then allow for that to happen. Again, if it doesn't, that's okay. We're learning as we go, but it's not like I'm just writing this to be a New York Times bestseller. I'm doing the work and putting the reps in. So I will have hopefully been able to celebrate that and see that a lot of people have already gotten a lot of value from the book. The book itself is also becoming a lead magnet for our community and introducing more people to smart passive income. So we see an influx of people who are getting excited about learning entrepreneurship and things like podcasting and YouTube and course creation and such, which we teach in the SPI community. And then I'm also on a Disney cruise with my family mid-July to just celebrate the mid-year, kids finishing school, son going into 10th grade, daughter going to 7th after that. We've all had a busy first half a year. And, what I like to do in terms of my work and balance, I always know that there's no such thing as perfect balance in an entrepreneurial family. But it's about the idea of balancing, knowing that, for a time period, it's going to be super imbalanced. But that's okay. We all know it's happening. It's not out of nowhere. And right now, we're completely imbalanced as I lean into the Lean Learning launch and some stuff related to some of our events coming up in June. And then rebalancing that on the other side and just like turning it off, going on a 7-day cruise with the family. And so I'm excited to just be with them, to just hang. That's what I'm excited about. And then, of course, the Pokemon channel, we're hoping to be at 2 million subscribers at that point. And at this current growth rate, it's definitely possible. And hopefully have signed some other bigger sponsors on board on that. And we have a lot of fun things planned that I'm not able to share yet. But most of all, I'm just trying to find the fun in all of it, right? It's a lot. It's compartmentalized, so I'm able to sort of manage it all. I do have some good people behind me, and of course the support systems, as we spoke about earlier, the champions in my life that have been able to support me through a lot of this stuff. But most of all, I just try to find the fun. And I think that especially as a creator, when you are having fun with the things that you're creating, your audience is going to be more likely to respond in a fun way. They're going to have fun with you. So I like to call myself the Pat of all trades, master of fun, because I always try to find the fun in everything that I do. And I'm having such a good time learning about traditional publishing in a very lean learning fashion. I've never done it before. And here I am learning, and I have the benefit of being able to report a lot of what I'm learning as I go to help other creators who want to follow the same path. Because I feel like I'm, in a way, the guy in the jungle with the machete kind of carving new paths for everybody. And I'm going to get nicked up a little bit. I might find a tiger that I try to fight off and fend off every once in a while. But for the people behind me, I want to make it safer for them. And that's what I do with the work that I do, the books that I publish, the videos that I create, and the guest spots that I have on podcasts like this one. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. All right, Pat. So what I'd like to do with you, if it's okay, is in 6 months, I'd actually like to follow up with you on another interview just like this one and see if you've reached those goals. Let's see if that book hit the New York bestseller. Let's hear about the 2 million subs. And I'd really love to hear about that trip with your family on the Disney cruise, because that sounds amazing.
It's going to be fun. Although the last time we were on the cruise, which is several years ago, the kids were young enough to go into the kiddie area and kind of be entertained that way. They're a little bit too old for that now, so I don't know if they're going to actually enjoy it as much as they had before. But I don't know how cool the teen area in the boat's going to be. But anyway, would love to follow up with you and everybody else and kind of report back on how things went.
Fantastic. All right, Pat, this is your time to shine. This is the time I want you to advertise yourself. How do we get a hold of you and all that good stuff? Okay, ready, set, go.
Thank you. You can find me at Pat Flynn on most channels. And I would, if I had one ask, it would be go to leanlearningbook.com. You'll see some bonuses there depending on when you're listening to this to support the book. And if I can come back in 6 months and say it is a New York Times bestseller, I'd love to come back and also thank your audience for being a part of that and helping to support that journey. So again, leanlearningbook.com. It comes with a free companion course, which has worked really well for our other books, where you can go online and kind of read the chapters while also getting access to all the information and resources as you go along, and some stuff to kind of help guide you along the way too. So leanlearningbook.com, learning how to achieve more by learning less.
All right, Pat. Thank you. So what I'm going to do here at the very end, first of all, I want to publicly thank you for showing me the way to podcasting, to entrepreneurship. Earlier in the podcast, you said it was a podcast that changed your life. This was the podcast that changed my life, was Smart Passive Income, listening to everything that you've done. And I just want to publicly say thank you so much for everything, Pat. You've been amazing to me. You've been amazing to all the Skoob believers that I've talked to you about and everybody that follows you. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hey, thank you for that. I do what I do to hear that kind of message. So thank you so much.
Yeah, me too. Hopefully somebody will say that to me someday.
I'm sure they will, or if
All
not
right.
already.
Yeah, right. All right, Pat. Thank you so much. All right, Skoob Believers, make sure you stay tuned for the wrap-up. Okay, everybody. Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, Skoob Believers, that was the amazing Pat Flynn. I'm so glad we finally got him on the podcast. And it's just a dream come true for me. And I hope you all learned a lot about Pat Flynn and what he has to offer. Make sure you go down into the show notes. Let's support Pat Flynn in his new book that's coming out, Lean Learning. I know I'm going to. I've already put in my pre-order for this amazing book. I know we're going to get a lot out of it. But as always, I do have a couple of major takeaways that Pat Flynn did talk about. Simplify and execute. Embrace the concept of lean learning, just like the book, by focusing on just-in-time information rather than overwhelming yourself with just-in-case knowledge. This approach helps you act swiftly and learn effectively without getting bogged down by the abundance of information. Embrace micro-mastery. Break down larger tasks into smaller manageable parts and master each one individually, the 1% difference that you can make. This process not only enhances your skill, but also leads to consistent, incremental progress without pressure of perfectionism. Thank you so much, Pat Flynn, for being on my podcast. And I really hope we all have a great adventure. Just so you know, now that Pat Flynn has been on my podcast, a little extra here for you. I now have 2 new entrepreneurs that I have my sights set on to get onto my podcast. One of them being Amy Porterfield. I've been listening to Amy Porterfield for quite some time. She has a lot to offer us as far as the 4 hurdles of stop and the experiences that she's had with them that she talks about constantly on her podcast. So I'd really like to have her on. The other one, this is a big one for me, Mel Robbins. Now, Mel Robbins wrote a book called The Let Them Theory. I've read this book so many times up to this point, and it's inspired me a lot to be able to let a lot of things go that used to bother me. She has some fantastic insights on perfectionism and on imposter syndrome. So we're going to have these 2 amazing entrepreneurs on our podcast real soon. So make sure you stay tuned for that. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for another amazing episode of the Undiscovered Entrepreneur. All right, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye. And there you have it, future entrepreneurs. We've taken another step towards our journey to get across that start line. Remember, every great business starts with a single idea and the courage to pursue it. You've already shown that courage by joining us here today. As we wrap up this episode of the Undiscovered Entrepreneur, I want to remind you that the start line isn't as far away as you might think. With each bit of knowledge you gain, each fear you face, you're getting closer to launching your dream. Until our next episode together, keep pushing, keep dreaming, and most importantly, keep taking those steps across the start line. They'll all add up to big strides in your entrepreneur adventure. This is Skoob, your guide across the start line. Remember, your future is waiting. I can, I am, I will, and I'm doing it today. Do you find yourself faltering when speaking in public? You definitely know what you're talking about, but you just can't seem to get over the horrific fear, and imagining people in their underwear is just not working. Whether you're gearing up for a big presentation or just looking to improve your daily communications, Leslie Fiorenzo is your go-to resource for mastering self-promotion, facing your audience fearlessly, and communicating with authority. Don't miss out on your opportunity to elevate your game. Contact Leslie Fiorenzo now, or go to tuepodcast.net/speak to step into the spotlight with confidence. Your adventure in public speaking mastery starts here and now. Don't wait to get your voice heard. Book your free consultation at tuepodcast.net/speak to start your adventure in speaking excellence today.